Finance Committee for October 27th to order. Yeah, speak up, Mr. Chairman.
Got to turn on the mic.
That helps.
Yeah. I'll call the Finance Committee for Tuesday, October 27th to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Searoy?
Present.
Mr. Hess? Mr. Byrne?
Present.
Ms. Weber? Present. Mr. Payton?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Present.
Ms. Haas?
Present.
Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Ms. DiColo?
Present.
Mr. Dennell?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Hunter?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
We have a quorum.
I have no request for public comment, so we'd move on to presentations. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just had something really
Just a
short
minute.
to.
Let's see here, 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had something real short to show the board. It was a result. I had the State of the County address that I made with various partners over at the Chamber of Commerce. They had a virtual breakfast. How do you have breakfast virtually, I guess? But anyway, we each had breakfast together separately. How about that? So there's a couple of things that I talked to people after the meeting they didn't really realize. So I thought I'd emphasize them here. I'm not big on victory laps, but there's some things that we've done this year that have been substantial. So if we go to the next slide, you can't really see that, and I apologize. Those at home, I hope you can. I just wanted to note that you know, I congratulate actually Bradley on their budget surplus. In their previous, it was in the paper today, their previous budget year, they had an audited surplus of $400,000 roughly. Ours audited surplus last budget year was $2.4 million. So we're willing to help them out if they want to get to that level. I'm just kidding. So it was, I just wanted to let everybody know we had a fantastic last year. This year has been extremely challenging for various reasons, but we had that number in the budget this year to try to accomplish that again, and a plan to do so, but obviously COVID happened. So if we can go to the next slide. There on the blue is our revenues and expenses. Revenues on the left, expense on the right. That's when we started the year. Those were our budget numbers, and then the orange is where we ended up. It's not necessarily the tale that we didn't gain as much revenue. It's the fact that when we dropped revenue, we dropped expenses in the same proportion, and we still ended up what I think will look like Steve estimates a small surplus, but it's still not what we expected nor wanted. But in the day of COVID, I think this speaks to how the management within each individual office has really watched expenses, cut where they needed to, and we'll survive this year. And when you see the budget next year, it'll be another financial survival year accordingly. So the final slide is just more of a snapshot. Obviously green is good, red is bad. Back in 09, we had the ending fund balance was just a small surplus. Then we really fell off the cliff when we lost 10 million in revenue in a course of a year. And we didn't recover from that until obviously we started this shift. The big thing to note is those two big red lines in the middle. That was when we amended the budget on the floor of the full county board meeting, or else that second red line would have went down about another $1.5 million. So if we remember that as a board, we came in with a budget, and it would have been much worse if we wouldn't have crafted an alternate budget and presented it on the floor of the county board meeting that day. It ruffled some feathers, but it ended up passing unanimously once we saw the validity of those numbers, and it worked. So as we started to climb back out of this hole, there's big chunks, and there's your tread water, those last two green lines. So that's all I wanted to let the board know is we had a plan, we executed it, and when the plan went south this year, we adjusted it and we cut our expenses to match the loss in revenue. So that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, as we move on to the approval of the minutes and at the same time the treasurer report, I would ask for a motion to combine and approve the minutes for September 24th and the treasurer's report. Is there a motion?
Parker.
Motion. Sokolo.
Sokolo moves. Is there a second?
Parker.
Parker seconds. All in favor of the motion say, that's a roll call vote.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Searoy, Mr. Hess, Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber, Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. DiColo,
Aye.
Mr. Dunno,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Okay, we can move to the Finance Department. Mr. McCarty.
Good morning, everyone. Hey, we'll start out with the miscellaneous financial reports discussion first. We saw a slight increase with sales tax, although overall you can still see that we're running a lot less than a year ago, so we're just continuing to watch that come in. October we received the July retail, so we're still a number of months behind as far as the COVID months and things. So watching that very close just to see what kind of trend continues on that. The one area that continues to on a normal upward trend that hasn't seen any fluctuation at all is the use tax. So we're appreciative of that. Actually it's coming in even higher, so it could indicate a transition from brick and mortar to online sales with COVID. And obviously we've been seeing that slowly over the years, but this may have the situation may have impacted that, and the online activity comes through the use tax area. The inmate bed rental did have an uptick this year, as I'm sure the sheriff will update us here in a little bit. Income tax has had some down months, but has been trending up here the last few months. And FY21 budget, just because of the situation we're in and not being able to really identify enough trend to feel comfortable with. So, conservative was the approach, and we'll continue to watch, and hopefully, we're in the range going forward there. So, and then Bradley, Bourbonnais, Kankakee. Bradley is now collecting their additional tax. I chose to leave it off because of the COVID situation, so that we could continue to watch apples to apples, if you will, from previous. So it does break out the original versus the new online. So I'm still watching to see how our trend follows with the trends of the local, to see what we can learn from that. So I will eventually bring in the new Bradley information, but right now I chose not to bring it in just so we can keep an eye on apples to apples in this COVID situation. So we'll work on getting that information as well. So I don't know if there's any specific questions on any of those before we move on.
Does any committee member have a question they want to raise on the financial reports? Hearing none, let's move on to cash flow update.
All right. For the cash flow, I brought in for the first time, well, second time actually this year. The last time we did estimates with when COVID originally started. There are those three options. But this one's just trending, normal trend estimates, and looking out, with budget information, trend-wise, and our first look out to what May and June of next year will look like, which is usually our two months that have the least that we have the least amount of cash to work with until the property tax distribution comes in July. And it's very similar to, if you compare May of 21 to May of 20, you'll see and also June 20 to June 21, very similar numbers. So I believe that at this point, with what we know, that we will not have to do a TAW, so that's the good news. We will have to continue to watch, and hopefully, things won't take an unexpected turn down any more than they already have for us. But so, I watch this daily, and obviously monthly we keep an eye on it, and I watch the trends very close, and we'll continue to watch this and continue to look at those months specifically, as we go forward. So I just wanted to, while we're talking about budget looking forward, that we also look forward with cash as well. So I won't go into anything else unless anybody has any other specific questions on that report.
Are there questions on the cash flow? Seeing no questions, we'll move on to claims recommended or not recommended for approval. You have the not recommended ones in your packet. Are there any that we want to lift up or make comments on?
Not me. Oh, no. I thought you were. I'll send it. There was some, Mr. Chairman, Hunter.
Mr. Hunt.
I had a conversation with a couple of commissioners with respect to the sales tax that 911 paid to Walmart. And I think that may be some mistake with respect to them paying sales tax. And I wanted to reference that. You'll see it on, it's a bill of $357, and you see that there is a sales tax in the amount of $27.22. I think there's a mistake. Would you agree?
They should not be paying sales tax, and they do have a number, I believe, but we could make sure on that.
Okay. And I assume that there should be some kind of communication sent to the 911 board or the CEO over there regarding not necessarily cease and desist, but they should not be paying the sales tax as is indicated in this particular bill. So I would move that a communication be sent to the 911 board regarding those items and comments that I just made with respect to the sales tax.
Is there a second on that motion? Mr. Kissinger seconds that motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Rick.
Ms. Sira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if the mailing address is that they sent the items to is 911, and if that is the case, it's a possibility that they could go back to our local Walmart and get that portion of sales tax credited with the proper documentation.
Mr. Chairman, if I can
check with them and find out. Mr. McCarty.
Yeah, we have communicated this to the 911 board, to Tammy Peterson specifically. This claim is a credit card purchase. The way we do the credit cards, the general fund covers it first, and then the special funds, all the other funds reimburse us. It's a process, we do every month. This came down unapproved, but 911 owes the general fund. That's the first segment. So the general fund is not on the hook for the sales tax, and she is aware that to pay the 911 fund back the sales tax, and is working on that side of it, because ultimately the sales tax is due back to the 911 fund, who is ultimately responsible, for this expense. So it's more of a procedural thing. This particular procedure is for us to be able to write the check back to ourselves, in essence, and then, but the sales tax issue has been communicated to her, so I was going through the motion to make sure that we could write a check back to ourselves and make sure that the board approves, you know, that process.
Mr. Hunter?
My question, and Ron and I discussed this as well as yourself, in principle, 911 would be tax exempt, and you know that's why I was wondering why we're assessed the sales tax. But you know, I understand the rationale as explained by Mr. McCarty, and if it's appropriate, I'll withdraw my motion in that regard. Is it appropriate?
That would be in order.
Okay.
If the second agrees. All right, that withdraws the motion.
And the second, I assume, too.
And the second, yes. All right, so we need a motion then, or a motion to approve those that are not recommended.
Second.
And Mr. Hunter seconds. A roll call on these vote.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Searoy,
Aye.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber, Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. DeColo,
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
We move to the monthly claims report. That information was in your packet.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I didn't realize it was a group. The Verizon Wireless, this is the second time this is a different month, but the second time this Verizon Wireless bill for animal control has showed up. I was going to ask the committee to add where all this, not only this one, but any previous one, because apparently this is an ongoing situation. Or if the committee wants me to bring back every single month of Verizon Wireless bills. So I didn't catch the fact that we were doing all of them, so I apologize. I would have plugged that in earlier. It's up to committee how they want it, how to handle this. Sorry.
All right, well, we can handle that by a second, another motion, I
Mr.
believe.
Chairman,
Me too.
Mr. Kinzer?
what is the issue with the Verizon bills? Can it be summarized quickly?
Mr. McCarty, do you have any idea?
It has something to do with requested information that they have not received. And the sheriff stood up and talked about this one last month, you know, and recommend payment on it. I'm not 100% sure what the behind the scenes issue is. This is how we received it.
Ms. Weber first.
I thought it was about Julie Boudreaux's name being on one of the phones, and she doesn't work here.
I think some of them, there's some other issues also, Mr. Chairman.
The other issue is the auditor was demanding to know every phone number that came to and from all of those phones. And the sheriff does not want that information out because it is public safety related, people calling on their neighbors' dogs, barking, people reporting dog fighting rings, I believe, that kind of stuff. So the exemption for law enforcement exists.
So do you need another motion, or you want that incorporated in the previous motion?
It might be easier just to have it on the record as a separate motion.
Okay, I so move.
All right, Mr. Hunter's moving.
Right.
And Mr. Searoy, did you second that?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay.
What's the motion?
Mr. Chairman, it would have to be until the end of this year. It would have to be redone.
All right,
In
so it'll
December.
be for, until the end of this year.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, second agrees to that. We would need a roll call on that, please.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Searoy,
Aye.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber, Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. DeColo,
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Mr. McCarty, were there anything more on those claims not recommended that you needed to called to our attention?
No, the other ones are individual. So if it was done as a group, then they're all covered then.
All right, thank you. The monthly claims, that is in your packet. And let's have a motion, and then if there's any discussion, we can have discussion. Is there a motion to approve the monthly claims?
So move. Peyton.
Mr.
I
Payton?
second. Zucolo.
Zucolo seconds. Any discussion on the monthly claims? Hearing no discussion, a roll call vote would be in order.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Searoy,
Aye.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber, Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zucolo,
Aye.
Mr. Dennell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler,
Aye.
motion carries.
Approval of the tentative budget for fiscal year 2021. Mr. Hess,
Make a
a motion to approve?
Yes.
Is there a second? Weber will enter into discussion then. What questions, comments? Mr. McCarty, what can you tell us about the 2021 budget?
Sure.
Tentative.
I've got I got the screen up. Do we want to go through like each fund, like general fund, tort fund, pensions, or just open it up for questions? I've got some highlights. I'll take the committee's pleasure on how you want to do it.
Highlights.
Highlights.
Committee's saying highlights.
Highlights, okay. The general fund, as most of you see, was balanced at just over 34 million. The total of the debt service and special revenue funds totaled 19.7 million. The highway funds, the group of them by themselves, totaled 28.2 million. And the health department and 911 funds, 9.7 million. So the total of all appropriation in the entire document totals $91.8 million in total. So you're all aware of that. The general fund budget, both revenue and expense at the balance number, is 2.3 million less than the FY20 budget. Some of the a couple of the highlighted reductions, if you will, in the budget. The largest was the interfund debt reduction, as Chairman Wheeler brought up in his short presentation. That totaled 1.8 million. That was the largest, but the other notable ones for reduction were the correction budget. It's 500,000 less than FY20. And the Sheriff's Department budget is 150,000 less than FY20. So we appreciate that is what they submitted. We appreciate the work that that Sheriff Downey did and his staff on this FY21 budget and what they submitted. As far as any increases, most everything is fairly close or flat, other than basic salary increases, whether it's non-union or union contract, et cetera. The only notable one, the health insurance, is increased about $378,000 over the FY20 budget amount. As far as revenues, I think we're all aware, like sales tax, the PPRT tax, the bed rental, those types of things. There are some increases in revenue. As far as, we will cover this at a future meeting, the corporate levy use tax is up because of its trend and the percentage. I still went conservative, but it's about a $200,000 increase on a conservative trend of what's actually happening there. The electric aggregation is up nearly 300,000 from a change in that agreement. And one of the few departments that actually are showing higher revenues at this point is the recorder fees, about 35,000 higher, although it's trending much higher. The conservative amount was about 35,000 increase. Most all are running pretty close to even. There are a few that are showing less. Court-related ones, for the most part, because of the closure there, is showing a decrease right now, obviously for the year because of the courts being closed. We'll see how that trends out, as we go here, go forward. So those are some of the highlights. I don't know if anybody had any specific questions, whether it was general fund or any of the other special funds throughout the document. I'd be happy to answer those specifically if there are some.
Mr. Kissinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I reviewed the budget, I'm not an accountant, but I do look at numbers. It appears that on the revenue side across the board that we're taking a very conservative approach and that we basically should do better than what's projected. Is that a true or false statement?
I'm hopeful that's a true statement, yes.
The next question, and it relates to how the budget works and how you determine these numbers. A lot of hands were involved in this, and the departments submit information to the finance department, and then they have to be tweaked. Have all the departments, I assume all the departments at this point are in agreement, and how do you tweak a budget if everybody wants something that they can't have? Just a general question.
For the most part, there was just a few departments that had unique requests. Those were communicated specifically, with Chairman Wheeler, and that communication gone back and forth. There were a few increases, but those were already done at the board level. The one that comes to mind was like for planning department, a new software. There was an increase in revenue, but also there was an increase in fees that covered that. For the most part, there's not a lot of new information in there, and everybody was very cooperative with and understanding where we're at. And I think for the most part, for all of us that have been through what we went through the last 4 or 5 years ago, we're very grateful that it's stable right now and not dropping off the cliff again. So I think with experience and stuff, it's everybody's satisfied and happy that we're at least at stable.
So Mr. Chairman, so the takeaway for this board would be that the departments are aware of this budget and that in general they've accepted it and believe they can operate their particular division within that budget. Is that true?
I think that would be a safe statement.
Yeah, we communicated out their bottom line number to everybody, asked for their input. We reviewed all the grants they have received and had a chance to input on all of their special funds. So yeah, all of this information has been out to the departments and have come back. And a lot of the special funds you will see that are same as FY20. A lot of them just responded to just duplicate FY20. They didn't see a lot of change, in special fund, and they realized that, the basic increases were there for their general fund budget. So, it's status quo at this point.
One more question. Mr. Chairman, one more question, thank you. Revenue bonds. Have we looked at reissuing those or doing something with those? I'm looking at the interest rates. Maybe we don't have that capability, but certainly when I see what we're paying and with the increase financial stability of the county, we should be able to do something. Has anybody reviewed those?
Yeah, we have the one item that we have to be very careful with is our bond rating. It was dropped accordingly when we went through the difficulty, but they're very slow to raise it back up as we get back to financial security. That is a hindrance to getting the better interest rates, but yes, we are looking into it and reviewing it to see if there is any possible way that we could save money on those.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Just to kind of close out what Ron was asking, this is the first year that, well, in the last 2 or 3 where we don't have any surplus, so it was a really easy conversation that I could end with no this time, and you hate to do that, but and then a few people will call back every 3 or 4 days to see if the answer is still no, but there is no room for anything next year. So while it might not have been the answer that some wanted, that's what the answer that we had to give, because there just wasn't anything to move around. And so it's about all we can say. You know, it's normally we can try to squeeze another 10 grand, 20 grand here and there when you're dealing with a surplus of $2 million. But we just didn't have that ability at all. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. If I may just add to that, for department heads and the board members, for next year's budget, there is no contingency. There's no any extra money outside of each department and what is budgeted. So it is a very tight budget, and we'll have to keep a very close eye on any additional requests, added things, you know, and where the revenues are as we go through FY21, because we could easily go negative just because of how tight and how lean the budget is at this point.
Sarah, I think you'd.
I'll finish if you want to go ahead. I'll be.
Mr. Hess?
What is the bond rating as of right now?
Did we go to 2, BAA 2? Because they didn't adjust us last year. They let it ride last year. There was no movement, but we got bumped up from just above speculative to, I think it was BAA2, was it not?
I believe you're right. There, I'd have to look it up. I don't have it off the top of my head.
But it was just one tick. It didn't go up anything further into the, you know, into the A area. So our call this year is when we were hoping to have a big jump. And I'm not sure they're going to do that this year with many people in government.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, this is more or less directed to the chairman, Chairman Wheeler, with respect, and I have substantial conversations with the state's attorney, and I'm sure you guys probably read the local newspaper with respect to what he has been able to do over and above what the budget provides for him in terms of him going after soft money, grants, etc. Mr. Chairman, how do you communicate to the various department heads to pursue soft money in terms of grants that which would augment their respective budgets?
There's a couple of things. First of all, I did see the article, realize that there's the local match, and we're paying for that local match on all of those grants. So the county board did step up and pay our part of the, usually it's the 20.
Right, the match.
Yeah, the match part of it. So the 20%, and sometimes that's substantial money, 80, 100 grand. But if our approach has been where it's diversion and other things where in the end, it's a good financial decision because there's less burden on the system if we keep people out of the system. And so you spend a little bit up front to save a lot on the back end with keeping kids on the right path. So we made that decision, and that was, we're happy to do so. Now, the communication part of it, we've got people on staff here. I'll say Ben Wilson is one who bird dogs grant opportunities, and we shoot those out to people as we see them. And then all of their state associations continually send them updates on what grants are available. So when we're talking, you know, I'll say like the Illinois State Association of Counties will send stuff out. I'll forward that on to Ben, and if it has to do with one of our offices, he'll give them a call.
And generally speaking, our department heads take full advantage of those?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I would, as a general statement, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm just going to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Kinzinger said earlier, that this budget was worked out with the department heads and everybody involved, and that just shows the climate of the county and the cohesiveness of the team that we have that are all working in the era of COVID, are all working together. Not many municipalities can say that they are going to have even a balanced budget, let alone, you know, and I know we're going to be flat this year, but it's because all of our department heads are working very hard to try to keep what they have and to continue to do the good work of the county. So that's.
Any other questions, comments on the budget? If not, we have a motion on the floor and a second. We'll have a roll call on the approval of the fiscal year 2021 tentative budget.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Seabright,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber.
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zicolo,
Aye.
Mr. Dennell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Yeah, could we clone Madam Recorder? I vote aye.
Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
I'd had a request that I let slip by. I think we wanted to adjust the agenda.
No, he did. Yeah,
We're halfway through.
you already did.
Okay. Then let's move to the treasurer's report. We've had a motion to combine and improve the treasurer's reports, so what information can you give us, Mr.?
Well, I was worried that you were going to amend the order right before me. That was going to put me later in the day. So thank you, whoever didn't do that. I just have a few things to go through. One, this is off the subject of the treasurer, but I think I speak for everybody on the first floor, and probably Lori as well on the second floor, that the door guards downstairs have been doing a phenomenal job, and it's been very, very busy. Trying to pull out people who are just going to the treasurer's office, moving them aside, sending them with voting down there. They've been doing an excellent job, and I just wanted to mention that. Number two, our online collection was up about 10% this year. I'm sure that has something to do with COVID, but we're happy about that because perhaps that will create a habit for people. We've tried it. It was pretty easy. It works great. Maybe we do it again next year. So regardless of how it happened, we're pretty happy about that. Distribution, we will have, I think it's 4th or 5th distribution this week, and then that will be followed by final distribution in November. Tax sale is on Thursday, the 12th of November. And we probably, and I have a call out to Quality Inn, we probably are going to move it as a result of COVID. It's typically in this room, but there's about 35 people that attend. And I think that probably will violate, we won't be able to fit within the COVID restrictions to be able to do it in this room, unfortunately. So there'll be a small cost.
35?
Yeah. Tax, you might be thinking of the typical tax auction sale. Yeah, that was done with sealed bid. This is the live tax buyer auction, where they're bidding on a lien for unpaid taxes. And people probably saw that we published taxes in the paper about a week ago. So we're moving down through the tax cycle. As soon as tax sale ends on the 12th, that will be a Thursday. On that following Monday, we will start back up with the Choices Payment Program, which has, I think I wish some people would, out there could talk about it, and maybe they are telling their neighbors. I think it saved a lot of people, especially during this time of COVID, by splitting up their payments. So you'll be able to start paying on your taxes for next year beginning November 16th. Now, obviously, we won't have a amount for you to pay on, but we assume that you'll be paying on this year's amount, and then we will modify the amount once taxes come out, up or down, and hopefully down, but not usually. And then last, but certainly not least, actually most important, and I think this dovetails with Steve, I am very, very happy to report that despite everything we've been through this year, that as of today, we are 0.28% above collection for the same time last year. The fact that we've collected more money this year in this climate is a testament to the people of this county. We have collected, as of this morning, $192,175,000 roughly, or 97.8% of the levy. Last year at the exact same time was $187,100,000, or 97.54. So to Steve's, to what Steve said about the budget, I hope that goes the way that this has gone, because we were all obviously very worried about what would happen. And I think that the taxing bodies in this county should all be very grateful for the hard work that the taxpayers have done to make this work based on what we know has happened this year. So I would entertain any questions.
Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Africano, you've done a wonderful job. How many people took part in your choice payment plan? And you changed the name on me because I wanted it to be called the Africano Layaway Tax Plan, but you changed the name. How many people took advantage of that this year? And I thought that was a great idea you did.
I think we're up. We're not at 1,000, but we're just under that. And it was funny because we're on an email chain from my association, and so I see everything that comes through. And the treasurer in Lake County, who's new, was asking, I don't think anybody does payment plans anymore. How many people still do them? And we were one of the few people that just started doing payment plans. Everybody has gotten away from it because it takes a little bit more work. Truth of the matter, it doesn't take hardly any work. I mean, it takes another several minutes for an employee to do it, but that's what we're here for, right? So for someone to be able to not have their house go to tax sale, right? And, of course, everybody thinks they're going to lose their house because it goes to tax sale, and they're not, unless it happens for 3 years in a row. But it is going to increase their fees dramatically. Could be up to 18%. So, excuse me, I just need everybody to understand this. If you owe, for argument's sake, $1,000, what the new plan does is this. If after September 3rd, right, the second due date, you have paid $800 and you're $200 short and it goes to tax sale, let's say the trustee buys it, that's 18%, but it's 18% based on 200. In the old days, it was 18% based on 1,000 because you couldn't pay a partial payment. You had to pay all or nothing. So it was a zero-sum game. So then you had someone paying 18% on 1,000. Now you're burying people in interest, and there's no chance. They're behind the eight ball next year, further behind the following year. Now they lose their property. This is a way to say, yeah, I get it. You can't make a $1,000 payment, but you paid $800. Great. Now to get out of the hole, you only have 18% on 200, and that's manageable. So
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Africano.
that's it.
Other questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, modify the agenda.
The Sheriff's Department, you have the monthly update in your packet. I don't see them in here for the Sheriff's Department, so we would leave that open to, if there are any questions you want to put on the record. Otherwise, we'll move to the animal control vehicles. I don't have that in front of me. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He was, the sheriff said he was gonna come and talk to us. They were gonna get a couple of vehicles. This came out of his criminal justice meeting. And pay for it out of animal control funds. So it's not a general fund expense. typically we head nod those anyway, saying, yeah, it's time, and, but I don't necessarily think it's appropriate to have a vote. We don't have numbers in front of us, but know that he can move on those because that's not out of the general fund. It rests with animal control, and they're using those funds. So, is there any questions, I guess, based on, you know, that statement? He's got a couple of old vehicles. I think one was a van and one was a pickup truck that he wanted to replace and go through the state bid process.
Ms. Weber?
But at the community service meeting, he and Mr. Seroy were going to speak to each other about something else. Did it happen?
I don't know. I think he's probably still researching the vehicles that he's trying to buy, because they have to be, the vehicles he wants, they have to be outfitted with cages and have to have room for, and I think the cages were almost the same cost as the vehicle itself. So he's probably doing his due diligence in researching the possibilities for vehicles. I'm assuming, because that's what he does. But I think he's going to use the monies out of the IPTIP fund, if I do remember correctly.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of money there to buy at least 2 vehicles with having a surplus left. So.
Any other questions? We'll wait until there's a need for a formal motion by our committee, if any. We have nothing from the auditor's office at this point, so we move to other business. Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Can we throw that up? I guess we have the liability. Anita said she gave it to you. Anita, are you able to share that on your screen, or did you email it to Kelly?
No, I emailed it to Kelly, but hang on just a second.
This, as long as we have it on the screen, because this just came in yesterday, so.
Right. I can, Kelly, can I share? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, hang on just a second, sorry. So, Andy, here's that overview.
So basically what we're looking at, is this highlighted?
I want to get back to. So here is.
Right. So I'll just read along the bottom. When we started out this program, we were with one company in 2015, $1.67 million premium just on the liability side. There was a contentious situation, if you remember, if you're on the board then, when we switched companies and saved about $600,000 a year. That has borne out. If you look at from our 2016 policy was 1.095 million for liability. Our renewal this year is 1.083 million. So in that time period, we're doing very well on our liability, and you know that we've had some big claims. The other side of it is, included in that 1.083 is the PBC, the Public Building Commission. If you remember, we brought them in to our policy mid-year because they had a renewal of 60-some thousand. And of this number, the PBC has to be segregated out because that's obviously the Public Building Commission. It's not, right now it's all of our buildings, but it includes health department and the jail complex. And then once those bonds are retired, those become our property from the PBC. But that was gonna be in the 60s, I believe the renewal was, and it's right around 50. We're waiting on the health department number, about $1,200, but we're at 48, so we estimate right around 50,000. Unlike previous years, they would get the bill and then bill us, and then we send the money to them, and then they send it in. Now it's all our policy, and we drove down costs through that economy of scale. So it was a very good decision for the board to do that in terms of saving us money ultimately, because it was our bill to pay, because they're our buildings when the bonds are paid. The other thing, a part of this is our work comp. Came in at 717,820. So last year it was 712,909. I have pushed back on that a little bit. Well, not pushed back, just made sure to note that we're audited every year on work comp, and then I'm sure those in business have had this. They said, well, you worked more hours than we estimated, you got to pay us. In this case, I think we're going to get a big check come next year because we haven't had the workforce we had the previous year, if that makes sense. So expect that we'll be bringing something back here mid-year because I think they're going to have to pay. They also gave us a COVID credit of $41,000. So really, if in the end, last year we were 1.749 million for work comp and liability. This year, 1.765 million. And that kind of explains everything. I think we had a really good renewal, especially lightning was not our friend last year. It fried out a lot of cameras, elevator problems. We had a lot of big claims, and they know what's coming. So I thought I would just mention that. Anita, did I cover everything, do you think, that we
I
talked
think
about?
so. It sounds like it, yeah.
Okay.
Right. What we discussed yesterday with them.
All right, we need a motion to approve this renewal. Is there a motion to approve the renewal? Mr. Kissinger, is there a second? Mr. Hess? Any questions on the insurance renewal? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, Andy, could you explain that COVID 41,000?
Yeah, the ICRMT, they gave a COVID credit to a lot of different, customers of theirs, and it was just, I didn't argue for more, so I took the gift. I didn't expect that. They walked in with 41,000 as a credit towards.
Is it kind of like our own personal car insurance? Everybody got a check?
No.
No?
No, it's on work comp and liability.
Oh, okay.
If it was on health insurance, and by the way, we did get that, and that cost us more to disseminate that, $4.38 to each employee than we actually got in. But we still have to hand that back to the employees, and I think they're getting them on their paycheck in the next couple of pay periods. I can't remember exactly when.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Kissinger?
Yes, as a part-time board member, I guess a full-time board member with a part-time job as a board member, I'd like to compliment those who are in charge in making these decisions. Certainly, they're excellent business decisions and are to a benefit of the county.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson, Mr. Swanson, Ms. Zicolo,
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler, motion carries.
Yes.
We may actually get a reduction on the liability based on the fact that we have reduced populations at our jail because they base liability on head count. So we had a reduced head count. They were not aware of that. So that's another, that may come back a little bit lower after they get back with us.
All right, we'll move to old new business. We need a motion to open the bids in regard to the e-waste management program. Ms. Weber, is there a second? Second. Ms. Haas? All right, we'll open the bids on that. Got to vote first. All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
You're still muted.
Aye.
Ms. Parker,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson, Ms. Zicolo,
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Wheeler, motion carries.
All right, now we'll open the bids. And let's see here. What are we gonna see? We've only had one response. I've not done an open bids envelope before, so this is a new experience for me. I've seen this done in Highway Department a number of times. And usually, people that open the bids have to look around quite a bit in order to see what the numbers are. All right, we have a cover page here with the name of the firm, Belson Steel, and name and contact person, David Dillon. And then we have proposal. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This is not technically, it's not a bid, it's a RFP.
Okay.
So this is a proposal that it's on tomorrow's agenda for planning to come back with a recommendation to accept the proposal. It allows us to be able to negotiate with a qualified bidder, if you will, for our services. So that we expect that to be over 30,000, but so it's an RFP to start with. I'm not sure you're going to find a line in there that's going to have a dollar amount, but if it does, then that's a negotiated dollar amount to come. We're working with all the other municipalities to put this together, but the first step was to see, per the request for proposal that's in your packet, who is set up both safety-wise, location-wise, days of the week open-wise, to be able to be our partner, if that makes sense. So we went through this process, and it seems like Belson is the only, there's no other ones?
There are no others.
Okay. Belson is the one. So tomorrow they would come back for the executive committee meeting for us to, with a recommendation to accept or not accept this proposal.
So do we need a second action here?
I don't think we need the second action here. We could, if you wanted to recommend or to, well, we're not going to read everything. I think that recommendation needs to come from the planning department.
Right.
Would you all agree?
Yep.
Okay. We open the bid here, so tomorrow they can do the homework, if you will, or today they can for tomorrow. So.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Here.
Mr. Hess.
I would make a motion that we accept this and move it to the planning department for tomorrow's executive meeting approval.
All right, there is a motion. Mr. Hunter seconded. That would be a voice vote, I think. So, any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Well, we need a roll call for the Zoom. The roll call for Zoom.
Mr. Byrne?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Nicola?
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, that motion carries. Is there any other old or new business to come before the committee? Mr. Hess,
Make a motion to adjourn.
is there a second? Mr. Seroy, seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.